better place. We are smart at what we do to make our world a better place. By the help of God, to make our world a better place. By the help of God, to make our world a better place. Smart do.
Hello students, today I want us to look at transport in plants. Transport in plants. Now, a plant requires nutrients, a plant requires water, because they need to make their own food. Therefore, for these things to move from the source point to where they're required, they have to have a means of transporting them. And the main things that are transporting a plant is water, that is transported in a plant. We have mineral ions, they are transported in a plant. We have gases, they're transported in a plant. Now, to transport these things, or these substances, a plant has to have a way of carrying these materials. So therefore, in this topic, we shall look at how plants carry these materials from the leaves or from the roots up to the leaves. But before we start with that, we want to look at a root. If you take a root and cut transverse section of a root, which parts do we see? In a diagram here, diagram 1, here, I've drawn for you the transverse section of a dicot, of a monocot root. Transverse section of a monocot root. Should be, yes, sorry, dicot root. Transverse section of a dicot root. Dicot root. Here, these are the parts that you're going to look at. We are going to look at monocot root later, but for now, let's look at the dicot root. The parts are, this is the root here. That is the root here. The function of the root here is for absorption of water and mineral salts. Absorption of water and mineral salts. Now, the second one we're going to look at is this, the epidermis. The epidermis protects the inner parts, of the root. So the function of epidermis is protection. Then we have this region known as the cortex. We have the cortex. The cortex contains parenchyma cells for storage. Then on the outer part, on the inner part of the cortex, we have a part known as endodermis. The endodermis function is to regulate the amount of water and mineral salts getting into the xylem. It regulates the amount of water getting into the xylem. Then, on the inner side of this dicot root, we have the pericycle. The pericycle, this is where lateral roots arise. Lateral roots arise from the pericycle. Then on the inner side, we have structures here I've drawn. These are the phloem, or this is a phloem. The phloem is a structure whose function is translocation, transport of soluble products of photosynthesis, or simply transport of manufactured food. Then on the inner side, which is star-shaped, we have another structure which is a xylem. The xylem is a structure whose main function is to transport water and mineral salts. The function also has another function that is for support. So xylem has two functions. The bigger one is transport of water and mineral salts. Then it is also a function in the support. This is the structure of a TS, of a dicot root. I want us to look at the TS of a dicot stem. TS of a dicot stem. The diagram I've drawn here, next is a TS of a dicot stem. TS of a dicot stem. Now this is the epidermis. Like I've said, the epidermis is for protection. Here we have the cortex. The cortex contains parenchyma cells for storage. This is called the cambium. The cambium is a tissue that is involved in secondary growth or thickening or widening of the stem that occurs through the cambium. And I'll say this is dicot stem. Transverse section can be known as TS. TS stands for transverse section. Then here we have the outer part is called this. It contains sclerenchyma tissue. It contains sclerenchyma tissues. Then next to the cortex, to the cambium, we have the phloem. And then on the inner side of the cortex, or the cambium, we have the xylem. That is xylem. Then here we have the pith. The pith. The pith is a storage tissue. So we had said the phloem function is to transport manufactured food or translocation. Xylem transport water and mineral salts. We have sclerenchyma is a tissue for support. Cambium is a tissue that is involved in secondary growth. The cortex contains parenchyma cells for storage, and epidermis contains cells and is meant for support. Sometimes the cortex and the epidermis can contain green cells. Those green cells can be used to manufacture food. When the parenchyma cells in the cortex are green, those cells are known as chlorenchyma. Chlorenchyma. Chlorenchyma are the cortex cells which are green and can manufacture food. This happens especially in young stems, which turn green and help in manufacture of food. Therefore, this is a structure of a TS or a dicot stem. I want us to look at the xylem. The xylem. Xylem in a plant can be made up of two cells. The xylem can be made up of two cells. One type of cell is known as xylem xylem vessels, which are tubular, looks like tubes. Xylem vessels are tubular. And within the walls of the xylem, they are thickened with lignin. The pattern of lignin thickening is different, but the xylem vessels are thickened with lignin for support. So these cells are hollow, meaning they are continuously hollow, like tube, that's what I mean, tubular. Number two, they are lignified. They are strengthened with lignin. Number three, they are made up of dead cells. So therefore, the xylem vessels are made up of dead cells. That prevents the cells from absorbing water. In the next lesson, I shall look at the second part of the xylem, which makes the xylem known as tracheids. Because the xylem vessels are made up of, xylem is made up of xylem vessels, and in some plants, other plants made up of tracheids. That is all for now. We'll link up the next lesson.